It was fun to read because I was really like on the edge of my seat, like what in the world is happening in here right now? I was still also like, what in the world is happening here right now? Hey everyone, it's Jayla, and today we are going to be reviewing The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. So, you finished The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and you're ready to discuss it. Or you probably just haven't read it yet and you want to hear some thoughts before you go and pick it up. In this video, we will be discussing the good, the bad, the spoilery, and all the fandom goodness in between. The first part of this video will be spoiler-free, and I will let you know when we're going to enter the spoiler section and when you should really get out. Today, I attempted a capital light look. We've got the green and gold eye makeup that matches the cover of the book, and I was going for these brassy earrings. Then we have more of a utilitarian look for the top, going more district, and I also have my hair in braids for Katniss, so I did my best. Hopefully I achieved what I was going for, but my capital look would not be complete without the designated glass of champagne, so let's pour that up real quick. Cheers. So without further ado, let's get into the non-spoiler thoughts I had about The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I am a huge fan of The Hunger Games if you haven't already seen the video I uploaded about being trash for The Hunger Games. That being said, like most of us, I was kind of hesitant to pick up this book. Not necessarily that I wouldn't, because I already knew I would buy it, but I was definitely not interested in the idea of following President Snow around. I thought it would be boring, or at the least just like not necessary information. I just didn't think following him around for 500 pages would be something that appealed to me, and I thought there were so many other characters that we could have really followed and enjoyed better and got more information out of too. But honestly, I wasn't mad at it. I have some issues with the book, but it being about President Snow actually isn't one of them. His POV actually provides a lot of insight into what the games turn into, which I wasn't expecting. And if you ever had any questions about the creation of the games or what aspects of it like came to be, then this would definitely be a good book to read for that. And we also get a pretty different view of the capital than we've seen in the original trilogy, because in this one they're just kind of getting out of the war and everything is not all glitz and glamour, even though a lot of them pretend that it is. And there's definitely a lot more nuance to the capital people. And while I definitely don't think I really needed that, because at the end of the day everyone seems to be awful anyway, I could say that it was still a very interesting aspect to the story. So to the question of whether the book is a must-read or at least a necessity to the original series, I'm going to say nah, not really. But I really did like it, and there are definitely some things you can get out of it that make it worth reading. So I would still say pick it up, which I'm sure if you're really a Hunger Games fan you were going to do anyway. You get a little bit too much out of it sometimes, which kind of annoyed me, but I'm going to get more into that in my spoiler section, because Suzanne Collins really likes to tie things together. One of the things that we do get out of it that I enjoyed, but also was frustrated by, is the world building. We definitely get a lot more understanding of Panem, but only in the vaguest of ways. We get a little bit more understanding of the wider world, but also in a vague way. So I'm starting to think that maybe there is really nothing outside of Panem, or at least they don't have any connection to anything outside of that, which really surprises me, because how do you just lose connection to the world if the world still exists? Collins actually mentions through Snow that the capital rules the known world, and now I need to know what is the known world. It's actually implied in the original trilogy that the world has succumbed to climate change, so I'm just trying to figure out how badly the globe was impacted by that climate change. Like, is the rest of the world underwater now? I know a lot of people have talked about this and that's kind of their theory, but how convenient is it that the only place that survived was North America? So what is this known world? And I don't know, known as such a subjective term. So we definitely learn a lot more about the different kinds of people who live in Panem, but I feel like we definitely are still centered in what we already know, which was both a plus and a minus in my opinion, just because I feel like she set up the things we already know in the original trilogy, so it would have been nice to explore a little bit outside of that. I don't want to say too much and give away spoilers though, so I'm just going to leave it at that. So for my overall enjoyment of the story, I did really like it, as I said, but there were some things to me that just felt unconvincing in the argument that they were trying to push. So by the end, I don't fully see how we get the President Snow that we do. I did talk about this with my friend some, and she did raise some valid points about how it was kind of in him all along, which I was seeing that, but I just felt like there needed to be more dramatic events taking place to convince me that this person would become who he is now. I also felt like Collins relied on the last 100 pages or so to really push that narrative of where President Snow was going to lead. But again, there were events that were taking place and characters and things that influence who he turns into throughout the story, but it just felt like the push that we really see the shift And again, at that, I don't feel like I really saw much of a shift. I feel like that was all relying on the last 100 pages. Other than that pacing issue, I did really think that the story flew by for me. I was enjoying it for the first 400 pages, and then things started to slow down in the end, and that made it harder to concentrate and stay immersed in the story. But Susan Collins' writing is still wonderful. Obviously, if you read the first 3 books and you like them, you're gonna like this one's writing at least. So I have no issues with that, and I loved being back in the Hunger Games world. Overall, I would say just go read it. Like, you know you're going to anyway, so just go read it. Now, I've been holding my tongue because I can't say everything I fully want to say until I can talk in specifics, so if you do not want to be spoiled, I was just leaving now because I am going to talk about all the things, all the feels, and everything that went down in this book. Okay, it's spoiler time, and I have so many thoughts. First of all, the entire idea of the Hunger Games was just a homework assignment. What? This was just some student who, first of all, they were drunk while they were making it up, and they turned it in for a grade, and then it became this thing that's been going on for nearly 80 years. There is so much about that that's crazy to me, because everything that kind of develops into the games is Snow's idea, which is something I had a problem with, but I gotta keep my thoughts in order. So all the things that happen are just pretty much Snow and the other students having conversations about, oh, how can we get more people to watch the show? Oh, what can we do to make it more interactive? Oh, da 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 da, you know? Like, they're just throwing things at each other in class, and all of this while they're casually talking about the murder of children. Like, wow, the Capitol is some sort of crazy. So moving into the whole thing being Snow's idea, that kind of upset me just because literally every single thing about the Hunger Games was something that Snow came up with. He came up with the idea for gambling, and he came up with the idea to have a victory tour so that the districts can see how winning the Hunger Games means so much and can be so good for the district. And yeah, I see that he's a smart guy. I see his ambition, and I know that he has a lot of ideas. I won't say great ideas, but they are ideas, and the Capitol seems to think they're great ideas. But every single thing that came up, every single thing about the Hunger Games was something that he said, really. It's just a bit unrealistic. So the back of the book says, ambition will fuel him, check. Competition will drive him, another check. But power has its price. I want to know what that price is, because I didn't see it in this book. I don't feel like President Snow lost anything. Maybe he lost his family, but that was his choice. Tigress sent him a letter saying how things were going pretty badly because their grandmother was ill and they had to sell their apartment and they were gonna have nowhere to live, and he decided to just not respond because he was gonna die anyway and he was too busy, he was too far away. So, X the family out. He loses Sejanus, who was his fake friend, because he didn't really care about him, and that is proven throughout the book. So maybe while that was his closest friend, it was still not really his friend, and he betrayed him, so even if they were friends, some friend he is, right? So he didn't lose Sejanus, he didn't lose his closest friend because he didn't really care about him in the first place. And the only reason he was even remotely interested in him was because he had money and he could help Snow out in that way. He didn't lose his girlfriend, who I shudder at the word girlfriend because I hated that whole love story, because he never really loved her. He did not really love Lucy. We see that time and again with how he just always puts himself first. He'll have thoughts about Lucy or some kindness he wants to extend toward Lucy, and then basically that just leads into him thinking about how that benefits him for the games, or just like, you know, having a girlfriend. There was nothing about this story that really convinced me that he felt any sort of real love for her. Even the fact that he went to District 12 to be a peacekeeper because he wanted to find her. Like, okay, you just wanted a girl to probably sleep with while you were bored. It's not the same thing. So he loses Sejanus and he loses Lucy Gray, and I just felt like neither of those were really real losses for him because he never really cared about either of them. But can I just say that Sejanus, sweet cinnamon roll that he is kind of an idiot. Why would you go tell Coriolanus about your plans to rebel or run away or whatever in the middle of a peacekeeper base next to Jabberjays? Like, I know, he probably didn't know how the Jabberjays worked. No, and you know, he definitely didn't know how the Jabberjays worked, so why would he think he was safe to speak about it at all? Even if it had been years, you don't know what those birds can do. But no, he decides that he's just gonna spill his whole plan because Snow is like a brother to him and I had to let him know. Stupid. And of course, Snow took that trust and turned it into a way to gain some sort of advantage, even though truthfully, at the time, he didn't actually know if he'd gain anything from it, so that's just one time where he was just really being evil for no reason. As for losing Lucy Gray, What happened in that scene? I'm still very confused. I understand that it's paralleling the ballad that Lucy Gray got her name from, which I thought was cool, whatever, but the scene itself was disorienting, and it went 0 to 100 real fast because one minute he's thinking about guns, and the next minute he's got the shining voices in his head telling him he needs to go kill his girlfriend, and that she was out to get him. The paranoia, while it was fun to read because I was really like on the edge of my seat, like what in the world is happening in here right now? I was still also like, what in the world is happening here right now? I kind of found it unsatisfying that we don't know what actually happens to Lucy Gray, but I like the mystery aspect of it just because of the song. Snow thinks that she was trying to kill him by leading him to that snake. I personally don't know if that was the case. I feel like maybe she felt something was about to happen. She felt like she started to realize that he wasn't a good guy, and then maybe from then she tried to leave and used her scarf as a way to send him in the wrong direction, which I think is something that he touches on, I can't remember. But ultimately he decides that she was just trying to lure him towards the snake. So that's not how I interpret things, and I think he was cuckoo bananas for no reason. But whether or not he shot her, I think he might have. I have strong doubts that she really escaped and got anywhere else. My friend theorizes that she made it to District 13 somehow, and now she wants to reread Mockingjay and see if she sees her in there. I am less optimistic. I think Lucy Gray is gone, and good riddance. I kind of didn't like her as a character. I just felt like she was always at 10. We obviously knew that Lucy wasn't going to end up being with him at the end because he does end up going back to the capital, but I was still very much interested in like what is going to happen, how is this going to end. So good job, Susan Collins. Staying on the topic of Lucy Gray though, I don't know why we had that love story. It was weird to me. It felt very insta-lovey, and not only that, it could have been done so much better. If it was going to be a love story, we could have made it a tactic that Lucy Gray was using so that she could manipulate Snow into like making sure that she had the best chance of survival. That would have been great. I would have been all for that. But instead we got this really weird story that I didn't see how they felt compatible to each other at all. I saw him basically as just a person giving her food and her falling in love with him for that. Which, I get it. Food is the way to my heart too, but still, not enough for me. Lucy Gray wins the games, and after they find out she was cheating and that Coriolanus helped her cheat, I thought that was going to be the start of the whole kind of Victor has to hang out in the capital and do whatever the capitalites want them to, whether that be prostitution or whatever, just like entertain them instead of getting to like live their own life and to be away from the capital. But instead she got to go back to the district, which was really surprising to me, just because it felt like, oh, you know she did this thing, and you know that Coriolanus cares about her, and yet she's just fine. But that just goes to show that the capital, they were evil, but they hadn't really reached peak evil yet. They were going through their like adolescent phase. My favorite parts of the book were when we stayed in the capital, and then things kind of lagged when we went into District 12. But there were still some very interesting things we got out of that as well. Most significantly, we got to the origin of the Hanging Tree song, which while I really enjoyed learning how it came to be, did it really have to be tied to President Snow? Like, no, that is sacred territory. Although it would totally make sense now why it got banned around the country, because yeah, I would probably not like that song either if it was my ex-girlfriend's ballad to her ex-lover. But it does make it even more powerful as this kind of rebellion song if it's a direct slap in the face to Snow, so that is really awesome. I feel like a lot of the things that Snow experienced were just kind of direct ties to Katniss, which I didn't love. Like, did we have to be in District 12 for his peacekeeping days? Because I feel like it would have been so cool if we could gone to any other district and seen another part of the world. That's what I mentioned before about how we didn't really build off of what we already knew. We kind of just stayed between the capital and District 12, and those were things that we were already familiar with. So very minimal world building there. But I think it also helps that we already knew about these places, so being a prequel, we didn't have to really go back and learn any new information. But it was just so weird. Like, it didn't sit right with my spirit that he was swimming at the lake that she swam at with her father, and that he was eating Katniss roots. It was just like, stop. This crossover is not what I want. Like, it's too much, you know? There were so many crazy scenes that left me on the edge of my seat while they were in the capital. For instance, we have when that tribute from, I think it was like District 5 or District 10, one of those, she literally just slit her mentor's throat because she was playing too much. Like, whoa. That was really the part that interested me most, because another memorable thing would be when Clemencia or Chlamydia or something like that, she was trying to take a little bit of credit for like the work that they did and making the games more interactive for the capital citizens, and Dr. Gall straight up said, oh, you know, why don't you stick your hand in this tank of snakes and we'll just see who's telling the truth here. These people are ruthless. I think in the original trilogy, the capital is just shown as this untouchable thing, which obviously by the end it's not, but in the beginning with Katniss just first being there, it just feels so helpless being a tribute there. But it was just so cool to see how things were underdeveloped in the beginning of the games, and how even mentors and capital citizens there was no one safe from the dangers of the games at all. As for the games themselves, I really didn't think to just have multiple cameras instead of one that's just focused on the main part of the arena. No wonder no one's watching this horrible, horrible production. I had a theory, and I'm so upset that that theory didn't come true. I thought that Reaper Ash was going to be the winner of this games. I mean, I knew that Lucy Gray was going to be, but I was hoping that I was wrong and that Reaper Ash was going to be the winner, because he was very, in the Capitol's eyes, disrespectful. He tore the Capitol flag, he laid it over the dead bodies, he just did all these things that made his mentor so embarrassed to be his mentor. And I thought that he was going to win and then be made an example of because he was doing all these things that disrespected the Capitol. So that would kind of be the start of maybe the tributes having to entertain the Capitol forever and ever after they've won. I did not catch on that he had rabies until they said that he had rabies though, so oops, I'm stupid. That definitely was made very plainly clear when Jessup, who actually did have rabies, ended up spitting in his eye. But you know, I'm slow and I'm rooting for Reaper, so I'm not gonna think there's anything wrong with him. I thought it was weird that he wasn't eating, but yeah, that makes sense now too. But Reaper seemed like this very much PETA type character who was like not going to be a piece in their games. He was going to do whatever he wanted, and he was still a human being, even if they were making him be an animal in the arena. Oh no, there's a bug in here and I hate my life. My theory going along with that would be that Lucy Gray was like a shoo-in to win, but Dr. Gall wanted to mess with President Snow in some way, and so that meant that she sabotaged her winning, or like just straight out, I don't know, found a way to murder her, which she almost did with those snakes, but luckily Snow was, you know, he had the mind of a master, and he remembered the whole scent thing and dropped his handkerchief in there. It would have been like, oh, Lucy Gray was so close to winning, it was just her and Reaper Ash, and then Dr. Gall found a way to like ruin it, and Reaper would have won, and that would have made President Snow kind of hate the Capitol, but also understand more his motivations to kind of rule the Capitol and rule the district. But you know, I guess the way that she wrote it makes a lot of sense too. But I still wish Reaper would have won. He was a really good guy. Can we talk about how Sejanus snuck into the games and somehow was undetected for the long time that he was in there, and then Coriolanus goes into the games to rescue him, and that was just a whole lot of weirdness to me. Like, what are the rules? What are the confinements of this game? I don't get it. Sejanus, you were a lovely, lovely man, and I wish that you had been able to succeed in your vision of creating a new world, but you made some silly, silly mistakes, my dude. We really need to talk about how we can go about achieving our goals in the future. This feels like I'm just complaining about the book, but I also just want to point out, why was Tigris his cousin? We really did not need that. It was fine if he just had some random cousin. We didn't need to know that person. Okay, let me think of a positive, because I did like the book. I enjoyed this book a lot until the last 200 or so pages. Again, I just want to compliment Suzanne Collins on writing such interesting deaths. She really takes the time, you know? It's not all about smash, smash, stabby, stabby. She's got tributes taking over and hacking the drones that bring people their gifts from their sponsors. The rat poison in the puddle, very smart move, Lucy Gray. Even though I'm very upset that that's the thing that got Reaper killed, because if he had rabies, why was he even trying to drink water? Wait, what? Why are the rules inconsistent when you don't want Reaper to win? Okay, the last thing I think I want to talk about is just kind of Snow's descent into Snow. One of the issues I had was that I didn't feel like Snow was really as ruthless as he was supposed to be by the end, because based on what I saw from the book, it seemed like, yes, he was someone who believed in the Capitol and he understood the necessity of the games, necessity used loosely, but at the same time he was questioning, and he also thought it was horrific, some of the things that they were doing. So I just felt like, okay, like he's got some good in him. What's gonna be the thing that tips him over and makes him not good anymore? And I think we didn't really get that. Yes, he's always been someone who looks out for himself, and we see that time and again. But if the things that are supposed to be him kind of slipping into his full evilness were losing Sejanus, or like betraying Sejanus more accurately, and losing Lucy Gray, then I didn't really see that in him. Maybe it's the fact that doing those horrible things was his reward, and so he only grew to do more terrible things and be rewarded more for doing those terrible things. But I don't know, maybe we should have focused more on that. Maybe we shouldn't spend a whole 200 pages of him being a peacekeeper then, because I would have rather seen him just continually thinking up evil ideas and being rewarded for those evil ideas instead of being punished and sent away and then seeing how the districts are. Although I do understand the necessity of kind of being in the districts because he found even more ways to make the Hunger Games more impactful by seeing the current conditions of the districts. But it still, it didn't go the way I wanted it to. Snow may have possibly killed 5 people in total in these games, and that includes Bobbin, who, self-defense, he was in the arena and Bobbin came at him, and so he killed him. Mayfair, again, that was another act of self-preservation. If Mayfair had left, he would have gotten caught, and then from there, probably been killed himself. And then 3 is Sejanus. He justified having to report him, saying that, oh, they wouldn't hurt him, he's got so much money, they'll just probably pay off the authorities and he would be fine. But I really think Snow knew for a fact that that wasn't going to be the case because the Capitol has never taken treason lightly, ever. And then he potentially killed Lucy Gray, even though that's very up in the air. And then lastly, he kills Dean Highbottom, which that death just felt very random to me. It didn't feel like it was satisfying. Or maybe it wasn't supposed to be satisfying for me, I know that, but like, it didn't feel like it was meant to be satisfying for him either. It just felt like a death to be a death, to show that he was like no longer afraid of killing people, which I guess is a point in itself, but I don't know, it could have been a little more impactful. But it also kind of hints at his future of, you know, poisoning his enemies and like poisoning himself to make sure that no one could poison him. So I get it, but I don't know, it just wasn't what it needed to be. So all those deaths, I guess they add up to him being desensitized to cruelty and being more open to it and leaning into it really to get what he wants. But I just think that there could have been a little more. Maybe if they'd thrown in something about cannibalism at the end, I would have seen it because he was very opposed to that, which as he should be. I'm glad he has some standards. But he did mention being low-key traumatized by his neighbor eating their maid in the street, so maybe if he had had to face some cannibalism and decided, yeah, I'll take a bite, I would have been more convinced that he was a totally changed man. So that's everything that really stood out to me about the book. I'm sure there's a lot more that I'm forgetting, but you know, when you're in front of a camera, everything goes blank. That's all from me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. Feel free to leave comments telling me your thoughts about the book. I can't wait to read them and talk to you about them. Until next time, have a great day, and may the odds be ever in your favor.